What's up guys, this is Wenzes. Welcome back to my channel. We're talking about today how to improve your life, pretty much how to step up your game in life. Step number one, really write it down. So this is something I start off with so often, but do you actually write down how you want your life to be? If you want to step up your game, you first off have to become aware of what you want. And if I look back at my life, I realized that of course the things I aimed for were very vague, and the closer I got to my goal, the more specific they got, and therefore I incorporated something new that was also vague in the beginning, and then it got better. But you have to definitely write it down. You have to make sure that you tell yourself, well, what kind of relationships do I want? Do I want to have an intimate relationship now, or is now not the time to focus on that? How is it with my friends? Do I have a social life? Am I surrounded by people who I can share my thoughts with? Because this is something most people completely neglect. We need like-minded people. We need people who we can talk to about things that actually matter to us on a metaphysical level. With time, you realize it's probably not the best thing to have only one friend and project everything on that person and have hugely high expectations of how that person has to be. And you also realize that probably it's not necessary to have that many friends, but you need a variety of people that you can talk to, somebody you can share your deepest thoughts with, somebody you can have fun with. And also this is part of improving your life. Also, this is part of stepping up your game. You have to define that. Where you're at, where you want to be. So how are your relationships? What are you doing professionally? How do you show up? What is it that you're doing right now? And what is it you want to be doing in the future? If you say, well, I want to be a writer, then what are you actually wanting to do? Do you want to be somebody who writes blog posts? Do you want to be somebody who publishes a book? You have to write that down. Same thing goes to your physical health. How do you see yourself? It's really important that we have an image of that we can lean into, something we can work towards. And writing it down will definitely help you, because that way you get your thoughts structured on paper. You won't have all this confusion in your mind. You will have written it down, and then you can move forward to the next step. Step number two is how you want to show up in life. Step number one is what you want to have in your life, what do you want to achieve, where you want to work towards. Number two is who you want to be. So first off, how do you want to be seen? Do you want to be seen as somebody who's productive? Do you want to be seen as somebody who's tough? Do you want to be seen as somebody who's funny? And you'll be surprised, every person that you'll ask will have a different thing. You might think, oh, doesn't everybody want to be seen as lovely and kind? No, some people have been seen like this their whole life, and the main thing they want is to be seen as somebody who sticks up for themselves, or somebody who's hard and knows what they want and wants to succeed. You don't know, but the interesting part is we very often don't even know what we want ourselves. So really write that down. How do you want to show up? Use archetypes. I, for example, really work with some archetypes back in the day when I started doing this channel, I think like 5 or 6 years ago. And one of the archetypes I chose for me was the priest or the priestess, right? Because it was somebody who shares their wisdom, who shares what they know, and who wants to advise. It's not so much the girl next door, and it's also not like the queen or the king. There's so many archetypes you can work with. It definitely helps. It helps you to tap into a part of you that you've neglected, that you actually want to be, and for some reason you felt you don't deserve to. But now is the time. You get to really choose what it is. And if you feel like a queen or a king, or if you feel like a warrior, then really make sure that you embody this. You have to write down who do you want to be, how you want to show up in order to do the things that will make you move into that direction. Also figure out, how do you want to serve in the world? How do you actually want to show up and bring value? See, I always talk about how important it is that we first fill up our own cup, so that we make sure that we have enough energy and that we give what runs over, and not that we give what is left, because in the end, if you keep doing this, you just drain yourself and then there's nothing left to give. But if you really start building with you and then you give, then you really create energy, because you exude positive energy and you get back more. You really give what is out and you get back, and that way it kind of like regenerates the energy tank that you have within you. But in order to do that, we have to send a signal out to the world. In order to do that, we have to bring some kind of value. It can be a value of I show up, and you can say it can be just through the joy that you just exude. that is also showing up. That is also serving. Really write that down and you will see what you actually want and how unique it is to you. For me, I always wanted to help people to help themselves get a better life. I really do it on a very specific way. And I don't know anybody who does it exactly how I do. And I thought, doesn't everybody want to? No. Once we realize we project so much onto the outer world and we have to see that this is actually so uniquely me, that's when we can say, what can I do so I can bring this into my life? I can actually highlight that instead of trying to project that on my closest family, for example, and my friends, to make sure that this is actually maybe something I should do as a side hustle or as a second profession. Something that will give this joy to my life, something that will give me this feeling of I am alive. This is how you really step up your game in life. This is how you really feel like you're getting to the next level. And then ask yourself what you can do today to lean into this version of yourself. Do not think, oh, if I study now and I go to college and I do an extra course and then I learn how to do this and I learn how to do that in a couple of years I can show up and start serving. That is a way of procrastination because we don't dare to show up in our imperfect selves. That does not mean that you can't improve. That does not mean that you can't get better and really get educated or learn all of those things. But you can also do something today that is not perfect, but that will still bring value to somebody. And you can do it today. And once you start doing this, you realize how much joy it gives you. You realize that this is something that you give without expecting anything in return. You just do it because that's part of who you are. And the first moment is the scariest because that's the moment where you actually have to show up and people will see that you're not perfect. Because up until this point, you're able to pretend to your own self that nobody notices that you're imperfect because you're not showing anything that people can have a problem with. That's how we all are. That's how I am. Like, there's just levels. There are levels where we learn, oh, okay, I'm playing it safe right now. Let me step up my game. Let me actually show up and be more of who I am, be more of my individual self. And that way you actually feel how you're improving your life. You feel how you step up your game, you're getting to the next level, and you feel more alive than you have ever before. Step number 3, be honest with yourself. So let's say your life would never change. Let's say your life would stay exactly as it is today. What would be missing? That's a thing a lot of us don't do, and I'm also guilty of this. I really make sure that I get back to this point very often, and then I ask myself, what is actually missing today? What am I waiting for? For example, me saying, oh, once I do this, once I have this success, then I'm gonna be happy. Or once I do those 4 steps, then I can focus on that thing that will make me happy. Or for example, I don't want to work out today and get fit. I know I want to be fit, but I can't do it right now because now I have all of those tasks. Well, our mind makes us feel like, oh, I don't feel like working out today, but I want to be somebody who works out. I'll just do it in the future. Cling, cling, cling. That's a great sign to realize, let me be the master of my mind. My mind can wander off and do what it wants for the other 10 hours that I have free time this week. But for now, for this hour, I'm gonna make sure that I work out because I'm the master of my mind. My mind is not the master of me. And I make sure that I do the things that make me lean into the person I wanna be. That's a decision we have to make. That's something we have to stick to. And if you look at your life, how it is today, not how it's going to be in a couple of months once you've done this and then you'll have time for it, but really how it is today, and you're not doing anything today that actually makes you lean into this, then that's a great point where you can actually tap in, change something about your behavior, and then get to the next level. A great example for this is dating. If you're somebody who hasn't dated for a long time and you always say, oh, I would love to date, I would love to meet other people, but you don't do anything, you stay at home, you come home, you watch TV, and then you go to bed, and there's no interaction, no social interaction whatsoever, then you're not doing something in order to be the person who dates. See, I'm not saying that dating is for everybody at all times. Like, I knew I needed that long period of time where I was single because I needed to focus on myself. But there were also times where I wanted to date and I didn't do the steps that were necessary because I didn't want to take responsibility for my life. The moment I said, well, this is important to me, I did online dating, and that really worked for me because there were a lot of psychology tests and you were able to meet people who actually fit into your life. It wasn't just a fantasy. It was really practical things that gave you the opportunity to meet people who you could actually have a future with. But that is something that I had to push myself for. I had to tell myself, well, I want to step up my life. I want to be somebody who actually puts effort into this. It's not so much about finding that person. It's about becoming a person who says, if I want this in my life, then I'm committing to doing something every week in order to improve the chances for this to happen. Also important to note is if you're doing things in order to get somewhere, but you're not making any progress, to actually be willing to let that thing go and reorganize. That's also something that we don't want to do because of our ego. So let's say you invested so much time into writing a book, and then by the middle of it or by the end of it, you realize, well, that's actually not the book for me, and actually it doesn't really turn out great, but I'm writing this other thing over here that's much more me, that's gonna have so much more success because now I have the practice. Then to let that first one go. It's not a bad thing to realize that you invested some time into something and it's not helping you to move forward. A lot of people do that with dead-end relationships. I also did that in my 20s. I had a relationship that didn't go anywhere. I had a partner that I couldn't have a future with because our lives were just too differently. My partner didn't pull his weight. Like, I know what that feeling is like, but I had invested so much time into this, I didn't want to let it go. That's also something we have to look into if we want to improve our life, if we want to step up our game. We have to be willing to look into the things where we're actually investing time and not making progress in. It's okay to let things go. It's never a loss because you learn so much through this. And in the end, this is what it's all about. Learning who you are, learning what is good for you, what helps you, what makes sense for you. And all of those experiences have helped us through that. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a stepping stone to success. And we have to be okay with taking a failure from time to time, letting things go so we can move on. Step number 4, set up an action plan for your goals. If you don't have an action plan, if you don't have something you can measure your success by, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to see the progress. We need to be able to feel that we're making progress in order to keep moving. Otherwise, we keep putting it off. We keep saying, oh, there are things that are more important, and then we let it go. And then a year has passed and you're asking yourself why you haven't made that progress, why your life hasn't improved, why you haven't stepped up your game, although you wanted it so much. Set realistic, specific, and time-bound goals. And then step number 5 is to revise your week, to really have a progress report at the end of the week. Have I made progress in the areas I wanted to make progress in? What is missing? What can I improve? So start measuring, start being honest with yourself of how you have been improving and how you haven't, and make changes. If you want to dive deeper into this, definitely watch the video on how to make an action plan for your goals. Like always, I wish you a wonderful day, a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.